Motherhood is one of the most essential roles in any society. Perhaps because of its ubiquity, it is often one of the least valued. Protecting, raising, and nurturing a child is hard work for anyone under the best circumstances. But when disability enters a relationship between mother and child, what additional challenges are presented? And what can our society do to ensure fairness to all, despite challenges to some? We examine motherhood, disability, and public policy today on The Professors.
From across the city and the 7 city colleges of Chicago, broadcasting from 63rd and Halsted at Kennedy King College. Professors take the art of conversation to a higher degree.
I'm Antonio Vasquez from Wright College. Joining me today are Temple Hemphill, Kennedy King College and children's advocate, Sabrina Nixon, author and playwright, and Bonnie McGrath, Columbia College teacher, journalist, and attorney. Welcome, ladies. Now, one of the things that usually you see is that when you discuss disabilities, it's treated as a cohesive group. Even the symbol is a person in a wheelchair. But there are a number of invisible disabilities. And I would like to learn and have our audience learn about some of those invisible disabilities. So somebody would like to share their experience with us?
Well, at the start, before we started taping, we talked about mental illness and lupus and things of those nature. We need to be mindful, and I am always encouraging students to at least document their illnesses or illness, because you don't have to be in a wheelchair to receive appropriate assistance. For example, here at Kennedy King College, we have a wellness center. I often will forward students, when applicable, in a private manner. I forward them to the wellness center. Earlier this semester, I actually walked a student over to the center, sat with her as she met with someone at the center, and she trusted me to be there, and it was in privacy, and we took the steps to get her the assistance she needed. She didn't know the center existed, and I know Malcolm X has the center. I believe most of our campuses at one point have had that type of assistance provided, and I know at Columbia that exists as well. I went there for graduate school, and Bonnie taught me during graduate school, and so I know that exists at Columbia as well. And so just promoting those types of resources for students who are suffering, just maybe not visibly.
And there are resources available to them when they're much younger. And would you feel comfortable with talking to that, Sabrina, about your child?
Sure. I have 2 children with autism. They're on different spectrum levels. My oldest, who just turned 18, he attends a city college now, and like Temple mentioned, they have like wellness center, but I believe each city college also has what you call a disability access center. So there are services available, but it's good to have an IEP plan, you know, before the child enters college. And what IEP means is individual educational plan. So once they have that in force, then it makes, you know, the process much easier than just starting from scratch. So
now the ADA covers children, and also the educational laws that cover children go through age 18. But once they go past that, now how do you as a mom try to help your son or daughter to accomplish this task?
Well, right now, I also wanted to touch on the importance of establishing legal guardianship. When your disabled child turns 18, legally they're considered as adults as with any other child. But it's best to try to establish legal guardianship at a probate court. That way, once your child turns 18 and throughout their adult life, you can, as a parent or caregiver or caretaker, can still, make decisions regarding the medical records, post-secondary education, assisted living services, different things of that nature.
That's correct. It's important a lot of times if a parent comes with their son or daughter to register, that I have to let that parent know that the daughter or son has to give permission for them to even be there during the registration process. So that's important. Now, Bonnie, you're a lawyer and you're also a parent with a child with disability. And what's your take on the issue of guardianship?
Well, I have a 29-year-old daughter with autism. I have not sought guardianship. You know, I just happened to very serendipitously read an article one day that said if your child is not going to go out and buy a car or get married and that sort of thing that can cause trouble in a disabled child's life, there's really no reason to get it. You know, if you have a good communication with your child and your child is protected and so forth in your home and with you at pretty much all the time, there's really no reason for it. And it just made sense to me. I thought, why turn over Molly's life to the court system when it really isn't necessary? I wouldn't, you know, she doesn't have to be protected from signing contracts and that sort of thing. So
No.
I didn't do it, unlike Sabrina.
Now, I do have one question. I mean, I have a friend of mine who's got a son that's high-functioning autistic, and his caseworker was able to get him a job at Jewel. And, you know, he's had his health issues, and he's beginning to become concerned. What am I going to do if I pass and my son is still around? Who will take care of him?
Well, this is the bane of our existence,
And,
right?
and as mothers,
And it's
you
a
know, you're
very-
trying to plan for
yeah.
your child from here to, you know, after you're long gone. So I'm curious about.
It's a profound existential problem, you might say, that I think we as mothers and fathers too, you know, everybody in the child's life worries about 24 hours a day to one degree or another. It is something on my mind all the time. And, you know, I have to grapple with this more aggressively as time goes on,
And
because
that-
anything could happen.
And that's where our discussion is about disabilities policy. Do you think the government provides enough help or supports for you to understand those options or those choices or programs to help your son or daughter once you're gone?
I think the resources are out there. There's lots of law firms that deal with this. There are a lot of informational meetings and things that you can go to. The information is out there, but I think it's very difficult to seek it out because of what it means for the future. And, you know, I think somewhere in the back of our minds, you think this is all going to go away and everything's going to be fine. And, but if you seek out a lawyer to provide for when you're not there, to meet the needs of your child, this is admitting something to yourself that is very painful and very upsetting. And so you kind of put it off, which is really the wrong thing to do. And it's, you know.
Yeah.
Which ties to mental, just depression. I find that when I talk to parents and they're raising a special needs child, there is just, you take the traditional burdens, or I don't want to say burdens in a challenges, yes, thank you. The traditional challenges, you can tell I don't have a child, right? I have a cat, so.
Oh, they're a challenge too.
Oh, yeah, he's really, yes, exactly. But the challenges of being a mother in general, and you add the additional needs that your children require, Sabrina and Bonnie, I actually have been around Molly, Bonnie's daughter, several times, and she is a joy, but I see just the everyday, and I've interviewed her for Streetwise before, Molly and Bonnie for Streetwise magazine for a Mother's Day issue, and just all of just planning to go to a party, a holiday party, takes so much more energy because if Molly has a tantrum, she has to be, Bonnie has to be prepared for that. If we were at a museum, the Cultural Center, and Bonnie, I think I remember Molly wanting snacks, and just how she goes about interacting with people and food and all of that. It is different, and people on the outside can be very judgmental, and dealing with that kind of judgment from people on the outside, and I just think it's so much that parents have to deal with, mothers have to deal with.
And which brings us back to that first question that you asked about the invisible disabilities. I wouldn't say that autism is the least bit invisible. You know, it's
No, it
quite
isn't.
visible.
Right.
And I think most disabilities are today. But I think, you know, traditionally, and I think this is really what you were getting at, people think of disabilities as people in wheelchairs and having trouble accessing things. And certainly when Molly, you know, she's 29 now, when she was first diagnosed with autism, the disabilities groups did deal with that pretty exclusively. Now, 25, 26 years later, agency that you go to or anybody that you would contact for help, there's a lot of attention paid to autism because it has been so much on the increase.
Right.
There's still attention, of course, paid to the accessibility issues, which many have been solved in that area.
With the physical
And
barriers.
so,
you're
exactly. And so now there is more attention to the, quote, invisible disabilities, which is good. You know, there are a lot of support groups, there's a lot of activities, there's a lot of understanding of people with autism and other mental illnesses and so forth. And that's been some very significant progress, I think, over the years.
Now, you bring up an interesting point. That is that we've managed to go in and work through legislation to address physical barriers. And we do live in a physical world, but we also live in a social world. And how have your children been affected by those invisible social barriers, those social norms of expectations? And how have you helped learn to manage that, or is that still a challenge? And maybe you could inform some mothers and fathers of your successes or failures, whatever you're willing to share with us.
If you can raise an autistic child, and I have been now for 29 years, you can deal with anything. I think that it does give you a certain sense of confidence and accomplishment, if nothing else. By the same token, it's a very difficult life, and there are a lot of prejudices and discrimination and so forth, and a lack of understanding. However, once again, I'll say there has been a lot of progress in that area. Today, everybody has a relative or a good friend or somebody in their life that has autism, and they are much more understanding. You feel that way too?
That's true.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to touch on some points that she made as far as getting the awareness out there. Like I said, autism is not at all silent now. When I first heard about autism, I didn't know anything about it. I thought about the movie Rain Man. That's what I knew about it, But the best thing a parent can do is, as soon as your teacher or educator brings to your attention that your child needs to be evaluated, do it right away, because it will save you a lot of heartache, in the long run. The longer you put it off, of course, the parent is in denial, for the most part, but you're really doing yourself a good service, by getting the child, the help that he or she needs at an early date. That way you can get exposed to different programs, different educators, different parents. But the best thing to do is find a support group. That will be my advice.
There's a website, actually, a good friend of mine is a Northwestern graduate, speech pathologist. She just launched a website called Nikki, Nikki, for the number 4kids.net, nikki4kids.net. And it's a lifestyle blog. It has resources, and it's to help special needs parents and families really live abundant lives, and how to attend a holiday party with your child.
Right.
If the child is in a wheelchair or young adult is in a wheelchair, you need the you need to make sure that the home has accessibility.
And your vehicles are even accessible, which is the main issue a lot of students that use wheelchairs find.
And things like that. And also I want to touch on, and we talked about this before the taping, and I don't know all the specifics, but from my understanding, and I believe you all have heard about it, special needs families who are suffering financially or in lower socioeconomic status will have additional challenges past the age of 3 with their children, because state funding decreases tremendously once your child is over 3 years old. And that's huge in terms of therapy. And as you said, I believe Sabrina or both of you have said, once a child is diagnosed, that intense therapy is needed. And if the financial support's not there, the need doesn't change, but the financial support decreases. And that is a problem, and that is what we really need to push for in terms of our pushing our legislators to really pay attention to the families that cannot afford the special treatment, the intense therapy, the adult daycares, things of that nature. We really need to focus on that, because the numbers, as Bonnie said, are increasing in terms of just let's look at autism. The numbers have every year they increase in terms of the number of children who are diagnosed with a spectrum of autism. They're high. I mean, they're just so.